Hey there, 6th grade. So in our next unit, we're shifting from decimals to fractions. So in this first video, we're just going to do a brief review of some basic fraction concepts that you should already know, but it's good to brush up on those before we get into fraction operations. So here is a fraction, 256 over 512, or 256 5/12ths. And so we need to talk about briefly just the different parts of a fraction. Hopefully you know this already. The top portion of a fraction, in this case the 256, is the numerator. And then the bottom portion of the fraction, 512, is the denominator. So it's always numerator over denominator, N then D. Think Notre Dame to remember that. So to simplify fractions, we do the following. A fraction is in simplest form when the GCF, the greatest common factor, of the numerator and the denominator is 1. So that means that you can't divide the numerator and denominator by any number equally besides 1. So if that's not the case, then we always want to simplify or reduce our fractions, and we do so by finding the GCF of the numerator and denominator, dividing both of the numerator and the denominator by the GCF, and then writing the resulting fraction. So we're just going to practice this in examples 1 through 3, simplifying or reducing each of these fractions. So number 1, I have the fraction 36 over 54, and first of all I can see that both of these numbers are even, 36 and 54, so I know that they have a GCF of at least 2. 2, however, is not the GCF of 36 and 54. The GCF is actually 18. So if I divide 36 and 54 by 18, well, 36 divided by 18 is 2. 54 divided by 18 is actually 3. So this reduces to the fraction 2/3. Now, a lot of people wouldn't think of 18 first off the top of their head as being the GCF of 36 and 54. So let's say that you thought the GCF was maybe not 2, but let's say you thought it was 9. Because if you know your 9 times tables, well, you know 9 times 4 is 36 and 9 times 6 is 54. So what happens if I divide by something that's not the GCF? Well, 36 divided by 9 is 4. And 54 divided by 9 is 6. So you get the fraction 4/6. This fraction, however, is still not reduced because I know 4 and 6 are both even numbers, and I can divide both of those by 2. So even if you can't think of the GCF of your numerator and denominator, still think of a common factor and then just keep on reducing until you can reduce no more. So now I can divide both 4 and 6 by 2, and I get the fraction 2/3. So 2/3 is our simplified reduced answer. 2/3, 4/6, and 36/4, all of these fractions that we saw in this problem are actually known as equivalent fractions, meaning they all represent the same sort of number. It's just that 2/3 is the most simplest of those fractions. Okay, number 2, 45 over 75. So divisibility rules help when you're reducing fractions. We know that both 45 and 75 are divisible by 5, since they both end in a 5. So if I divide 45 by 75, I get 9. 75 divided by 5 is 15. So I get the fraction 9/15. 9/15, however, is still not reduced because both 9 and 15 are divisible by 3. So we just need to keep going. 9 divided by 3 is 3, and 15 divided by 3 is 5. So this fraction actually reduces to 3/5. Finally, 17/35. 17 and 35 actually don't have a GCF besides 1. 17 is a prime number, so it's only divisible by 1 and itself, and 17 does not go into 35. So for this problem, we really can't do any kind of reducing, so the simplified answer is simply 17/35. Okay, so that's a review of how to reduce fractions. Now we're going to move on to mixed numbers and improper fractions. So mixed numbers are numbers that contain both a whole number and a fraction. For example, 3 and 3/4 or 1 and 2/5. They indicate the sum of a whole number and a fraction. So 3 and 3/4 means 3 plus 3/4, 3 wholes plus 3/4 of a whole. And then 1 and 2/5 represents 1 whole plus 2/5 more. A fraction that has a numerator less than the denominator is what we call a proper fraction. So that would be your normal fractions like 2/5, 3/8, 5/7. Proper fractions are less than 1. So they're not 1 whole, they're a part of a whole. So that's why the numerator is less than the denominator. A fraction that has a numerator that is greater than or equal to the denominator is what we call an improper fraction. So improper fractions are greater than or equal to 1 whole. So the fraction 3/2 is improper because it represents 3 half parts. So that would be 1 whole part and then another half part if you look at this diagram here. The fraction 6/6 represents 6 sixth pieces, which was actually equivalent to 1 whole. So this is also improper. So we're going to practice on the back how to change mixed numbers to improper fractions and vice versa. So to change a mixed number to an improper fraction, we do the following. We multiply the whole number and the denominator together. Then we add that answer to the numerator. And then we write that final sum over the original denominator. So 2 and 1/2. If I wanted to change this to an improper fraction, I would multiply my denominator and my whole number. 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4. And then to that, I'm going to add my numerator, which is 1. 4 plus 1 is 5. So I end up getting a new numerator of 5 that I'm going to put over my original denominator, which was 2. So 2 and 1/2 is equivalent to the improper fraction 5/2. Number 5, 3 and 2/5. To change this to an improper fraction, I multiply 5 times 3, which is 15, and then I add 2, which is 17. So I get 17, and then I put that over my original denominator 5. So this becomes 17/5. We can also change whole numbers to improper fractions. 2, I can rewrite as 2 over 1, which is also equivalent to 4 over 2, which is also equivalent to 6 over 3, if you look at these diagrams here. To change a whole number to an improper fraction, the simplest way to do that is to place the whole number over 1. Now we're going to switch gears. Improper fractions we can convert to mixed numbers, and we do that using division. Okay, so a fraction bar really means division. Okay, when I see a fraction bar, that's really a symbol for division. So we do this by dividing the numerator by the denominator, and then we place the remainder over the denominator to get the fraction part of our mixed number. So let's practice this with number 6. The improper fraction 23 over 4 I can rewrite as a division problem, and my numerator is always going to be my dividend. This means 23 divided by 4. So I'll do 23 inside, 4 on the outside as my divisor. 4 will go into 23 5 whole times, and so 5 times 4 is 20, and when we subtract, we get a remainder of 3. So to make this a mixed number, our quotient 5 is the whole number portion of our mixed number, and then our remainder, 3, is the numerator of our fraction. It goes over the denominator of our original fraction 4. So this is equivalent to the mixed number 5 and 3/4. Number 7, 21/7 is an improper fraction. So if I set this up as a division problem, 21 divided by 7, well, 7 goes into 21 3 whole times, and there is no remainder. So 21/7 is equivalent to just the whole number 3. Okay, so hopefully that was a quick review for you on some basic fraction concepts. If there were any questions you had over this video, make sure you've written those down. Until you're in class the next time, folks, have a nice day. You're all wonderful people.